All right, good morning. I'm going to share with you today the remaining parts of modules 1 and module 2. So in module 1, we began talking about how the course is organized, and we didn't quite finish looking at how do you create pedagogy in the classroom or the framework for doing this kind of work that we're involved in. Okay. So I will share my screen. I actually have the PowerPoints in your modules. I rearranged them a little bit. So if you want, you can refer to that, or you can just look at the screen. So as an educator, I have the dual responsibility to engage in critical and continual process and to examine how my socialization and biases inform my teaching and affect the educational outcomes and experiences of the students in the classrooms that I have. I have the responsibility to ask myself or examine the lens through which I understand the people and the happenings around me. Only when I have a sense of how my own perceptions are developed in relations to the experiences will I even begin to understand the world and to effectively navigate relationships with the people around me. I also have a responsibility to my students to work toward eliminating my prejudices, examining who is and is not being reached by my teaching, and relearning how my identity affects their learning experiences. To be an effective multicultural educator, I must be in constant process of self-examination and transformation. So this is the position that we as critical educators take. We have to always ask these questions. Who am I? That is, what are the cultural threads that make up the fabric of who I am today? Am I ignoring the existence of differences as a way to avoid even addressing difficult conversations or difficult topics? What are the privileges that allow me to be where I am? What privileges shape me, what I think, and what I teach? If you're going to be a critical social justice teacher, these are some things that you have to constantly ask yourself. You have to constantly be in a state of introspection of yourself as a cultural being, as an educator, as a member of a society. And then you have to take the responsibility to engage in the critical and continual process of examining your social biases, the ways that you've been informed, and then to work on those when they oppress or marginalize others and students aren't giving opportunities in your classrooms. So that's the stance that I take with you. And that's the stance that I ask that you take as you engage in this course. So when we start thinking about, well, how do we do that? Mariano Soto Manning has developed a framework that says, in order to do this, there are 3 components that we must transform. First, it has to be transformation of self. Then it has to be transformation of teaching and transformation of society. And as you can see, this is a continuous process where it evolves over and over and over again. There is no point where one can say, I've done it and I've reached the point. I'm a social justice teacher and I am done with that. It is always a process of outgrowing your former selves. This is not a one-shot deal. You must continuously examine yourself, examine your teaching, and examine society, and make so that it makes equitable spaces for all to learn. So let's start with the idea of transformation of self. To teach in an equitable way, one must start by identifying as a cultural being. One must understand how one's culture is shaped and continues to shape who one is. Otherwise, one will only honor his or her culture as the norm and teach in monoculturally specific ways. So we tend to see the world through the views or the lens that we have been socialized into seeing. And then until we can actually see the world through multiple perspectives, we will only be able to understand the world through our lived experience. So when you're asking yourself these kinds of questions, you have to say, who am I? What makes up the social fabric for who I am today, who I will be, or who I was? Am I ignoring the existence of differences as a way of avoiding or addressing the difficult issues that are related to them? What privileges have allowed me to be where I am? What privileges have shaped who I am, what I think, and what I teach? So that's a constant state of mind that one has to be in order to transform him or herself. In order for us to understand who we are, there's a researcher, Bobby Harrell, who says that there is this cycle of socialization where we're born into a world with all the mechanics in place. There's no guilt, no consciousness, no choice. There's limited information or misinformation. And that's the beginning of how we're socialized. Like, we're born into a family. That family has certain beliefs, certain traditions, certain customs. And because we're born into that family, we are taught that on a personal level by family members. This is called our first socialization. These are the people who shape our world. They can be people who are in our immediate circle, family members, teachers, the church we attend. Those are things that are immediately the first items of socialization in which we engage. And it sets a source of who we become. So a lot of kids, they're born into families, and families are, oh, he's going to be a doctor, or, oh, she's going to be a teacher, or, oh, look at my little boy, he's good at sports. Just those words are affirming or setting levels of socialization that child first experienced. That child internalizes it and then live into that or debunk those theories. Okay. Harold then says, once we have first socialized, those things are then immediately reinforced by messages that we get from institutions such as churches, school, television, now social media. It takes a big part in that. The songs we listen to, the books we read, how we're taught, all of those things are institutional ways of further sending that message to us of who we are or who we can become. They reinforce it, they sanction it, they give us positive rewards or punishments, they offer us privileges, or it can be discrimination. So if you look at the cycle, we're first born in the beginning, first socialization, then those ways of being first socialized are then reinforced through the institutions. And then what happens is that it results in these levels of emotion, such as dissonance, silence, hatred. It could be violence, stress, lacking of reality. But the way that we're reinforced, it can result in these kinds of behaviors. And then the person either does one or two things. The person takes actions to change, or the person does nothing and it just maintains the status quo. And that cycle continues over and over and over and over. So first, Harold's research on socialization says the people we're around, the institutions we're in, the things we partake in, all promote or make us who we are. This is sort of just an example in words of what I shared with you based on that graphic. Okay? So what I want you to do now, and I'm going to pause the video for a second, but I want you to take out your circle of multicultural self, and I want you to look at who you are. I give you an example of mine. So in the center, I am Michelle. That's my name, my given name, the name I'm often called. And the way that I identify is I am female, educated, Christian, Black, I'm heterosexual, I'm an English speaker. In fact, I only speak English. I'm not dual. I'm linguistic. I'm middle-aged, I'm middle class, I'm almost middle-aged. I am an able-bodied. And so those are the ways that I identify, okay? Some of these identifying factors offer me privileges, and some of them are not seen as privilege. They're actually objects of oppression, okay? So I want you to take a minute, and I want you to go ahead and fill out your cultural self, the circle of my cultural self form, okay? All right, let's look at what this next term is, intersectionality. When we think of intersectionality, it is a term that scholars use to acknowledge the reality that we simultaneously occupy both oppressed and privileged position, and these positions intersect in complex ways. So let's go back to mine. So one way that that my identity intersects is that I am an educated middle class female, Black female. Okay, so educated middle class Black female. All of those identities offer me certain privileges, but at the same time, it offers opportunities for me to be oppressed. So when I say middle class, that could be seen as a state of privilege because in society, as socioeconomic status, the more you have, the more you are able to afford and have access to. Okay? Educated, the more knowledge you have or the smarter you are, affords you opportunities to have privilege or access to certain things that folks who may not have the level of education that one has with a PhD would be, that person may be oppressed, whereas someone with education may not be. So then I also said that I'm Black. In society, race tends to play either roles of privilege or marginalization. In this case, people of color in society tend to be seen as lesser than by norms that have been a part of the way that we've been socialized, okay? And then female, gender. We know that gender, the gender of male usually gets privileged over that of female. So when we look at the intersectionalities of those four identifying factors, it's some things offer me privileges and other things offer me ways that I may be oppressed in a society who does not value that identity factor, okay? So now what I want you to do is look at your circle of multicultural self, and I want you to think about what identities privilege you and what are those that oppress you, okay? In this way, what you're going to do, you're going to complete another form in just a second. I want to show you that. So let me stop sharing and then I'll pull that up for you. All right, let's see if I can find that one. Okay, so let's look at this. This form is called Social Group Membership Profile. What I want you to do is I want you to fill this out. In the column labeled Your Identity, you will complete the social group affiliation. You will then number the rows based on the characteristics 1 through 9. For example, if race is the identity you are most aware of, you will put a 1 there. If gender is an area you'd like to learn more about, you put a 6 there. You can put more than one number in a row if it fits. So for instance, if you would like to learn more about religion and is most comfortable, you will write a 6 and a 7 on that line, okay? So for instance, for me, when it comes to race, my identity would be Black. I think that I would give that a number 1 because I'm most aware of this. Like anytime I enter a room, I know that I'm a Black person. Ethnicity, African American. Gender, female. Economics, middle class. Physical, emotional, or learning ability, I'm able. Sexual orientation, I'm heterosexual. Religion, I'm Christian. Age, I'm middle class, I'm 47. Size, I would consider myself chunky, but others call it obese. Language, I speak English, okay? And so when I think about which one would be the one that I would like to learn more about, I think the thing that is often on my mind is I would love to learn more about different languages that I could possibly speak so that I can broaden that aspect of who I am, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to complete this chart, and then within the PowerPoint, there's something else that you will be able to do in regards to that, okay? So take a few minutes and go ahead and complete this. All right, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So we talked about intersectionality. All right. When you start thinking about transformation, we talked about transformation of self. Now we're going to talk about transformation of teaching. So right now, I think it's a good place for me to stop this video, and then I will start again with transformation of teaching in video number 2.